Hello chums, and welcome back. Now, I had a little bit of a thought, and I was thinking, what can I do for my next episode? And I'll be honest with you, I've got too many ideas, and I need to start trying to narrow them down a little bit. And I thought, well, as you know, I'm running a micro squirt ECU on my car, and I thought, do you know what? That might actually be quite a good place to start. So I'm going to try, if I can, to use my knowledge I've picked up over the last couple of years, because I'm not an expert, which I think hopefully will actually be an advantage. So I'm not going to assume you know everything, because I don't. And I'm just going to try and take you through it. So we'll keep it nice and broad, not field specific, like I say, and I'll hopefully go with things you consider before you think you need to go standalone ECU, because you don't actually need to, depending on what car you've got. If you do, the kind of things that maybe you should try and consider when making your choice. We'll go into like budget side of things, and then also about installation and aftercare support, if you want to call it that. But hopefully you find it useful. It is a dreary and rainy day today, so let's go find somewhere cozy and warm. We'll get snuggled up and we'll dive straight into it, and I hope you find it interesting. Oh god, this car's a lot of fun. And it's a lot of fun under every single speed limit in the entire world, because it doesn't go fast enough. Anyway, let's stop being a child and get back to the house. That's better. It's not particularly warm or snuggly in here actually, but we are back at WornOut HQ, my garage. I'll be honest, I've had a couple of runs at this video and I've really struggled how best to convey the information I want to get across without waffling too much, but I think the best thing we can do is to make a few assumptions here. So I'm going to assume that you've put the work in, you've done some research, and you've worked out that really a standalone ECU is the only way to go. You don't own something like a Honda, which obviously has got a lot of plug and play options with Honda and stuff, or a new Ford, or a Volkswagen, or an Audi, where the actual standard ECUs are actually really mappable anyway, especially if you've got later performance stuff like the Focus STs, or the little Fiesta STs and stuff like that. Or it is that you're converting a naturally aspirated car to a turbo, and you need something that's going to run that extra fuel in. So I thought if I could go back and actually think about this logically when I first started this, what would it have been really useful to know? And that's where it's been difficult, because it ends up being a bit of a minefield of stuff that I wish I'd kind of worked out. But I reckon we just kickstart this, we see where we go, and hopefully by the end of it, I'm happy with it, you find it useful, and we all had a good time. So let's start with the first thing. Right, so for the time being, I'm going to make this about my car, because it's a little bit easier to put it into context. So when I got this, because I knew I was going to a turbo, I knew I just needed something that could do multi-port injection. Every ECU will do that. That it could run turbo, like a map sensor and stuff. Every ECU can do that. I wanted it to be something that was relatively supported, but I didn't need it to be too crazy, and that I could find someone that would help me be able to wire it and do the mapping and stuff. So again, this is quite a big deal really. If you're going to be doing this yourself, as in you've decided that you want to do the wiring yourself, are you doing all of it yourself, and do you have the support that you need? So I was pretty lucky. One of the reasons I actually chose a Mega Squirt or Micro Squirt was because my friend Al, as you had mentioned already, is really into them. He's done plenty of them before. He's got on his Calibra Turbo. His friend Claudio that he put me onto, who's now my mate, he's obviously done it before as well. So I knew that I would have the support to basically help me go through the wiring and suss it all out. I'm part of a couple of really good clubs as well, and even there's not really many, or anybody I know that's running Micro Squirt, people know the standard wiring and stuff for these. If you're going to pay someone, then obviously before you go out there and just dive in and buy an ECU, it's definitely best to speak to some tuning places first, just to find out what they recommend. See if you can find somewhere that's got experience in a particular type of ECU or in the car that you've got. They may well say that you don't or do need certain things. They'll be able to give you a fairly decent heads up cost for how much it's going to cost them to do all the wiring for you. Massive benefits to that, because obviously one, it's going to be to a really good standard as long as you pick the right place. Two, it's going to take half the time, and they may even be able to map it for you at the same time. So it's going to be a lot more of a drive in, drive out kind of side of things. But on the other side of that coin, I will say, learning all of this, learning the mapping side, doing a lot of the wiring, knowing how all this stuff is set up has been a massive benefit to me, because I've had a few problems with this with electricals, starting it and things like that. And every time, pretty much, with a little bit of help from Al on occasions as well, I've been able to work it out because I understand it now. When I go to the track and stuff, and I'll take my laptop with me, if I get any problems, fingers crossed, I'll start to be able to actually work it out. So there are big benefits to all of it, but it's definitely something you need to decide early on, so that you can budget for that and allow for the amount of time that it's actually going to take. Right, now here's something I actually think would be really beneficial for you to do, both either to help you make your decision whether you actually are going to wire this yourself, or just as a kind of a pre-piece of work, I guess, before your stuff turns up, before you kick this off. And that's to really start to understand your own wiring, okay? So at least with this like Fiat engine setup, taking the actual loom off is a bit of a doddle. There's only a few bits underneath for the alternator and stuff, and then it all comes off relatively easy. So you can probably sit there then, and it's entirely up to you how you do this, actually mapping where everything goes. Now, I actually did mine on the car, so I had the loom fit to the car. And then some of it, obviously, it depends on your knowledge, but things like you've got the throttle position sensor because it's on the throttle. And then you've got things like the inlet temperature sensor. That's relatively easy to find because obviously it's in the inlet. And obviously, you know which ones are going to the injectors and which stuff's going to the coil packs and stuff like that. Because if nothing else, even if it is just a piece of pre-work, so when you actually come to wiring your car, you've got it all labelled up, you're ready to go. It's a really, really good start, but it might actually highlight some massive holes in your knowledge. You might come to look at this wiring setup and there might be a lot more missing than you actually think. So you might not know what some of the sensors are, or all starts to become a little bit unclear. It may actually even change your mind. You might think, actually, this is not for me. Wiring is not my thing. I'm going to pay someone else to do it. But that's good. It was a worthwhile exercise. Or it just gives you some homework. It just means you've got to go away, find some wiring diagrams or speak to some people and actually find out that information. The other thing I would say as well, and this, I'll be honest, this is a little bit of a hindsight thing because I probably can do this now because I'm already at the sort of business end of it. But if you can, try and have the best idea you can of how you want your wiring set up to basically look and where you want everything. So I've never ever liked that my ECU sits here, all my relays and everything are there. I always said I was going to put it inside the car, and I probably should have just done it because I'll be honest, I'm sort of second working it now. But if you say to yourself, right, I want the ECU inside the car tucked away, then straight away you know how long you need your loom to be. So my 8-foot loom is more than enough to stretch from inside the car to every single sensor. So it saves you a job there. It's also a perfect opportunity to figure out if there's anything extra you need. So if you're going turbo especially, you need a wideband. So again, if the ECU is going inside the car, that changes the routing for quite a lot of the wiring because it only has to, hop under the dashboard. Map sensors, things like that. If you're keeping a lot of the other standard stuff, then it's fairly easy to know where you're routing it. If you're going to tuck the loom or tuck it a little bit, obviously that extends it as well. So it's all stuff you should really do. I'll take my own advice when I come to rewiring it, and I will do that exact thing. And I think it will just pay in the long run because so much of mine is messy and I've messed up little bits. I mean, I'm messy as far as looks wise, not actual functionality, but my wideband wiring's all kind of tucked out the way because it was a bit long because I didn't really plan where it's going to go. I just kind of jumped into it, and that's part of the reason why I'm doing the video. So hopefully you won't make the same mistakes as me and you'll just plan that a little bit more. Right, so the next thing is, so you've got a pretty decent idea now where all your ECU and stuff is going. You know sort of what consumables you're going to need, so what size loom and that kind of thing. The next thing I would say, and it's not really needed for this sort of level you're going to be at, but is to download your tuning software. So there might be a couple of options. You might want to have a look at a couple and see which ones you kind of favour the most. But it'll be really useful. So once you've got power going to the ECU and you've sorted some earths out and you've done some of the basic wiring, as you're doing the sensors, you can use that tuning software to figure out whether the sensors are working. So if you're getting a reading from your throttle position sensor, inlet temp, that kind of thing. So it's actually really useful. But if nothing else, at least I found it really useful to start looking through the tuning software to find out what sort of expectations the system has of you, I suppose, for specs, information. So it will need to know things like injector size, how many crank wheel teeth you've got on your crank wheel. And obviously it varies for every car. It needs exact CC size, that kind of thing. So we're going to turn on the old Samsung Apple and we'll take a little dive into the tuning software on there. Again, this is not going to be teaching you how to do it, but it's just going to show you some of the tables. Just give you a little bit of a heads up so you've got some sort of idea. And here she is in all her glory. And like I said, really, you don't need a decent laptop for this. I mean, this one's actually from my mum. Cheers, mum. but it just needs to support the software you've got. So, I mean, as long as you meet the basic requirements there, that is all you need. Now, you're not going to be able to see this particularly well. We'll try and zoom in. So what you can get with at least Tuner Studio is you can get a Mega Log Viewer, which is there, which is just when you're actually data logging your car running and stuff like that. It's just got a really, really good real-time like playback of all your air fuel and throttle position and stuff like that. Like, it's a really handy tool to have. And then you've got the main Tuner Studio system itself. So if we'll open that up, we'll just give it a real basic look here. Like, I really am not going to be able to show you everything. I mean, especially not in this short video, but it just hopefully makes it a little bit less daunting when you come to actually go to start looking at this kind of stuff. Okay, here it is. One thing I would probably say to mention here, this is just like any software, like you always can save backups. So when it actually comes to doing the tuning and stuff, when you actually got your initial tune or your initial setup, and you're learning this stuff and you just want to have a mess around, as long as you save a backup version of it, you can't really cock this up because you'll always have an old save version to go back to. So I would definitely recommend messing around with this before it even gets near your car, just so you know if it all goes terribly wrong, nothing's really happened. But you'll see here, this is the main dashboard. Like, we've actually set this up to put these specific dials on there just because they're the ones most useful. So you've got like air fuel, throttle position, whether you've got decent battery voltage, because that plays a much bigger part than you'd expect. Ignition advance and stuff like that. So it's pretty basic setup on this bit. I've tried not to go too mad with it. But if I just open up one of the basic tables, I'll just show you some of the stuff that you're likely to have to go away and find out unless you know it off the top of your head. Some of it's pretty obvious. I suppose everything's obvious if you know it. Some of it not so much. But yeah, we'll just go for a few random tables. And obviously, if you've seen this stuff before, I apologise. But if not, then hopefully you find it useful and just makes it a little bit less daunting. Okay, so here it is. This is just one of the first basic settings tables. And this really is just fairly generic information in these. And a lot of the time, depending on what car you've got, a lot of this could be ruled out because it won't be something you'll be using. So you'll see all down this side, this is all greyed out. That's because it's for sequential injection, so firing the injectors at different times. Now, you don't run that on a Fiat 8 valve anyway, or at least they don't run it as standard. And a lot of cars, you don't need it either. So that's something else you don't have to worry about. But what I effectively did when I got this tuning software is I just worked through each of the menus, went down to the first one, saw what information it needed in that, see if it was relevant, wrote a note down if I needed to find it out or not. Or if I had to ask Al a question, I sent him a picture, happy days. And I just worked my way all the way along, figuring out what stuff I could basically do myself and what was going to come down to the actual tuning side of it. So if we go into that, so if I close this table down, and we just go into one of the fuel settings tables. Now this is where it starts to get a little bit more complex. So again, I mean, in reality, it's not a particularly difficult table. You've got revs along the bottom and KPA along the other side. So what we effectively did, or what I managed to do, I got really lucky, is I managed to get the stock Fiat Punto 1200cc engine I've got in this. I got the stock fuel table for it. It was actually a picture off of Google from one of the old Fiat forums, and I copied that up to the point of it being stock, and then we basically adjusted it, or basically completely guessed it from the boost point upwards. And we knew we were never going to get onto that anyway. It was only going to be needed for the idle. I mean, it's actually worked out really well because it saved us a lot of time. But this is absolutely going to be the bit, I suppose this is where the expense comes. This is where the expertise comes when you take it mapping. This is where they'll put a lot of the work in. So again, it's not, I appreciate I'm not really telling you how to actually do this stuff, but it's just trying to show you what sort of things you're going to be presented with when you actually start doing this. But I guess the key here really is don't be afraid to get stuck in and don't be afraid to ask questions, man. There's no such thing as a stupid question. You do get forums sometimes when you'll ask this stuff and people are like, well, I had to work it out, so deal with it. But get in with a good group of people, find a decent forum for your ECU, and to be fair as well, like there will be people out there that have done this already, especially if you've got a car. Like I said, with the Hondas and stuff like that, there probably will be some basic mapping tables and stuff out there that you can get that will get the car running. It'll get it running and idling, and it'll give you a chance to check everything over. So oil leaks, it's not making any nasty noises. I've definitely had that before. And when you actually come to mapping, then it's just going to save you a lot of effort. So I've spoken to MTech Automotive about my tuning, and because they know this is running, they've estimated about half a day. And obviously depending on what their hourly rate is for that, but half a day mapping, they'll MOT it and stuff as well. So you've only got to pay for transport there, the mapping and the MOT, because it really does start mounting up. I mean, just imagine if you take a day off work, you pay to get it transported there, they get it on the rollers, they fire it out and something's not right. You know, it's got dodgy sensors or the actual engine's got a problem. So I suppose the main thing is you just want to get it to a point where you know everything works and it will at least try and fire or start firing, and then you're ready then to go to mapping, and you're just going to save yourself so much more money. And at the end of it, you'll know so much more as well. So, but one more thing I do actually want to touch on as well, because I do think it's important as well, is just keeping your motivation up. So I think sometimes getting into this and just starting to look at it and seeing it all kind of unfolding will sort of just get you going a little bit. And also some of the cool stuff like this. Yeah, so when I said to you earlier on about like the Bluetooth adapter on this, so you can do it to your car, just being able to mess around with this stuff and seeing how, like, you know, effectively cool it's going to be when it's all up and running. Sometimes when it starts to get a little bit tough, we'll just give you that little bit of motivation. I'll be honest, I've given up on this car a few times. It's actually been up for sale maybe 2 or 3 times, maybe once seriously. I just got fed up with all the problems I was getting, issues with the actual engine itself and then the wiring and stuff. But if you start getting things like this, so this is MS Droid, I'll try and get it so you can see it, and you can set up like a basic dashboard on it, and you can mess around with how it looks and like what you actually display on it. And when you go into it as well, I mean, I can do basic tuning from this, so you can set rev limits, you can turn your flat throttle shifting on and off. Your launch control you can adjust from here, and you end up just start sitting there thinking, this is actually really cool. I think I've actually just transported into Fast and Furious or something. I know it sounds stupid, but you just need to find a way. This is how I at least keep my motivation up. It's just trying to see little snippets at the end of the tunnel, you know, that light. And I think that's it. Just try and stay motivated. If I could give you one piece of advice, if you're gonna do this, do it. Just decide you're gonna do it and just get it done. I've taken far too long really on the wiring. I'd say that's the one thing I've dragged my ass a little bit on. I don't necessarily enjoy wiring too much, and I kept umming and ahhing, should I just take it somewhere and get it finished? But then by the time you get halfway through it, taking it somewhere is just going to be a nightmare, because they're going to have to figure out what you've done already, potentially change a load of it, so you're almost at a point of no return. So yeah, do your research, decide whether it's the right route for you. Find the support you need, whether it's friends or businesses. Get the budget, make sure you've got enough budget and allow for a bit extra, and just dig into it. I promise you, in the end of it, it'll be really rewarding. And when you eventually see some videos of my car running, hopefully I'll agree with you then as well. But I really do hope you found this interesting. I know it's a really quick whistle stop. It was never meant to be a how-to and actually teach you it. But what I will say though, especially for the Fiat boys watching this, if there's some really specific questions you've got about the wiring or the mapping or the software I'm using or the problems I've come up against, stick them in the comments or go on my WornOut Racing Facebook page, put them on there, and I'll be happy to help or do another short little video for this. But anyway, it's quite enough talking for me. I'm very conscious of the fact that I've done another video where I've effectively not actually done anything. I've just done a lot of talking, but it's all been worth it, I hope. I've not forgotten about the turbo. I'm just getting my ducks in a row at the minute. Just trying to get everything ready, start recording all the episodes and stuff, and fingers crossed that'll be out soon, and you'll see some real progress with this car as well. So without further ado, I would like to thank everyone for watching and for your great comments so far. See you next time.